Good morning, y'all, and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to update you guys on my histo. So about a month ago at this point, I had a hysterectomy. Um, I went with Dr. Beth Cronin, who was suggested by my PCP, and I cannot say enough good things about her. She, as a surgeon and as a medical professional in general, is absolutely amazing. The last video that I made about this told you guys that I was having some communication issues with her office, which has gotten significantly better post-op, thank goodness. Um, so I'm just going to tell you kind of about my experience, how it went, how COVID impacted it, because this is in the middle of this big COVID epidemic, obviously. So last video was right after my pre-op, so I'm going to start with the morning of. I had to arrive at Women and Infants Hospital for 7 a.m. It was still dark when I got there. The staff at the front desk had no idea where to send me. I probably went to like 5 different rooms before I actually got to where I needed to be. Because it's a large hospital and I had never been there before, and they just assumed that I knew where I was going. When I got to the check-in, I had to fill out a gender form. The staff person who had me fill it out and explained what it was very kind and um, gentle about it. And luckily for me, it wasn't a super dysphoria-inducing situation because I'm really used to having to do that. But I know that it can be a really sensitive and uncomfortable thing for some people, so I wanted to let you guys know that that may be a thing depending on where you go, because it was a women's hospital, and I was having a surgery related to female anatomy. They had me sign a form that basically said, yes, I was assigned female at birth, yes, I have a uterus right now, and yes, I want you to take it out. Um, Not entirely sure why, but that happened. Um, I did also have to get my name spelled correctly on a lot of my documents because apparently they spelled it incorrectly, which everybody seems to do. After all the paperwork, I went and got pre-op labs done. They took some blood, made sure that I was hydrated, and all that kind of stuff. While I was waiting in the pre-op room, after they had me undressed and put the gowns on and all that, I filled out my TDI request. My surgeon told me that I could do that the morning of, and just let them know that I'm applying for TDI, I'm having surgery, and I will be out of work for quite some time. That went over really well. It was a lot easier than I expected it was, but I have been told that not all states have TDI as an option, so if that is an option for you, make sure that you get that done day of because they're very, very picky with their time constraints. I've had loads of paperwork issues with both TDI and FMLA through this whole process, but I'll get to that later. In the pre-op room, they went over my allergies probably every 5 minutes. I'm lucky enough to have a allergy to a very common drug, so they made sure that all the staff knew about my allergies. Obviously, I and all the staff were masked 24/7. Um, they were very careful about social distancing. They made sure that they washed their hands and used hand sanitizer in front of me every single time they touched me. It was very professional, very well done. I got to meet quite a few medical students who were working with my surgeon, which was pretty cool. Um, all of them were super trans friendly. I think the most not trans friendly part about the whole thing, other than the weird gender form, was that the staff that weren't working directly with me and all of the other patients were staring at me the whole time. I mean, the hospital is literally called Women and Infants Hospital, so seeing a guy with a full beard in a women's hospital, I can imagine can be jarring, but at the same time, like, the stares and the whispers, mostly from other patients, was really uncomfortable. I tried not to let it get to me because obviously I was there, I was excited, finally getting histo, but that can be an uncomfortable situation, especially for people who are more sensitive to other people's stares and awkwardness. They gave me an IV in my hand, and they gave me a little bit of saline and then something. He called it a margarita, to help put me under. They gave that to me right before they moved my bed to the OR and said that I would probably stay awake the time that it took to get to the OR and then lay down on the table and then knock out, but I honestly don't remember anything after the bed started moving. Like, I remember going towards the elevator and feeling it hit me, and then nothing. um, so the surgery went really well. Afterwards, I found out the surgeon said my uterus was only like 11 grams or something like that. It was really, really tiny. Um, which I guess has a lot to do with the fact that I've never given birth and also I've been on testosterone for 5 years. Um, so there's that. Everything went fine. I had a laparoscopic hysterectomy, so they have a bunch of little tiny incisions in my abdomen and then pulled the uterus out through my vagina, and took my cervix out as well. I personally chose to leave my eggs in there. There is not enough science to know for sure whether it's medically preferable to take them out or leave them in. Um, what my surgeon said to me was that all the studies show that if you have your eggs removed, your ovaries removed, and you go off of T, that leads you to an increased risk for osteoporosis. I'm obviously planning on being on T for the rest of my life, um, as that's something I said in my last video, so I'm not really worried about the osteoporosis issue, especially because being on T does decrease your risk for that. However, there is an increased risk between cis women and cis men for heart disease. So what they say is that being on T increases a person's risk for heart disease. What they don't know is whether having the ovaries still there acts as a kind of bonus organ to buffer that effect, and if you take the ovaries out, your increase is more, or if it doesn't change, they're not entirely sure because they haven't done a whole lot of research on it. So because I eventually want to have kids, and if I am in the financial situation to use my own eggs for that, I'll do that. And because I don't have a high risk of ovarian cancer in my family, I decided to leave them in. So they took out my uterus, my fallopian tubes, and my cervix. And she said it all went really well. I am told afterwards that I was awake and in the post-op room for like an hour before I got my phone, in order to be able to like contact my family and all of that, but to me it only felt like 10 minutes. I was probably in and out a lot. Um, After I was awake and like could answer questions and all that, they moved me to a fourth floor recovery room. They put these weird like squeeze machines on my feet, I guess, to keep my blood circulating and stuff like that. As soon as I woke up, this was the most uncomfortable thing of the whole process. As soon as I woke up, I felt like I was going to pee myself immediately. Like, the pressure and the urgency with which I felt like I had to pee was the most uncomfortable thing of the whole process. It was awful. I had to ask the nurse 5 times to let me pee before they moved me up to the fourth floor. She said they couldn't do that because I was still too dopey, so she gave me a bedpan, and I couldn't pee. I literally felt like my abdomen was full of urine and I was going to explode, but I could not pee no matter how hard I tried. It took me hours to pee, y'all. Hours. It was awful. It was like I would sit there for probably 5 minutes on the toilet once I got upstairs and just tried to pee and it would not come out. was the worst feeling. Like, I constantly felt like I was going to pee myself. And that was one of the only things that was preventing me from going home, was that I had to pee before I could leave. They gave me Tylenol in the hospital. I declined the pain medicine because I wasn't really in a lot of pain. I was really bloated and like uncomfortable, but I wasn't in a drastic amount of pain. I slept a lot during that day. I'd wake up to use the bathroom, text my fiance, fall back asleep, or at least try to go to the bathroom. So I ended up being there from about 6:30 a.m. Through the surgery until I think I left around 7 p.m. when I could finally pee. All of the staff assumed that I would be staying overnight, which I'm not entirely sure why. When I first had my consult for histo, I made it very clear that I did not want to stay overnight if I didn't absolutely have to. It was in my chart that I wasn't going to unless I had to. Like, I am not sure why everybody assumed that I would be staying overnight, but that was an odd experience as well. They did provide food and water and all that through the entire day. The food was actually really good as compared to what I would expect for hospital food. But I also had such dry mouth from the surgery that I didn't really want to eat much because it felt like sand. I was drinking and drinking and drinking. I brought a second half of the Gatorade that I brought for my pre-op, and then a whole other Gatorade, and I drank them both along with like 3 pitchers of water. Like, I was so thirsty and I could not pee. It was awful. But I really wasn't in that much pain, just super bloated. The ride home wasn't too bad. I live probably about an hour away from the hospital. I brought a super like fluffy hoodie that I could place on my lap so that the seatbelt wasn't directly on my incisions, and that helped a lot. Bumps are definitely no fun if you're going over like speed bumps or potholes and all that, but it wasn't as bad as I expected it to be. Once I got home, um, it really wasn't that bad. For the first 2 weeks, I couldn't lift more than 10 pounds, so that was kind of boring because I didn't really have a whole lot to do. I was super bloated for the first 2 weeks. I was exhausted, so fatigued for the first 2 weeks. But I think the worst part of recovery for me wasn't the pain, it was the fact that I couldn't move my bowels for 5 days. Despite the fact that I was on stool softeners basically round the clock, I just could not go. It was extremely uncomfortable. I was bloated, I was nauseous, my stomach was just all in knots and uncomfortable, and I ended up finally giving in and taking a regular laxative instead of a stool softener because I just could not handle it anymore. And eventually was able to go after like 5.5 days. Some of the other post-op things that I ran into was that because I had to shave my whole stomach, that was super, super itchy for like 2 weeks, because the hair was growing back and all that, and also my incisions were a little bit itchy, mostly just because I had the Band-Aids and the steri strips on for a while. She said the Band-Aids could come off after 24 hours and the steri strips should stay on for 3 days. I left the Band-Aids on for like 3 days and the steri strips on for like 5. And I'm not sure if it was just the like sticky stuff from those that made it so itchy, or if my body was just like, you're healing, you're gonna be itchy. Either way, I was itchy for probably like 2 weeks, which was uncomfortable, but definitely not the worst thing ever. Yeah, so I had my post-op yesterday, and that went really well. I saw my surgeon in person. They had me do, they checked in with my weight and checked in on my pain, all of that. No pain at this point, no discomfort. The only thing that I'm still dealing with is I'm still bleeding. So that's super dysphoria inducing, which sucks. But it's not really heavy bleeding or anything like that. She decided that she wanted to do a pelvic exam just to make sure that there wasn't anything that wasn't healing well or anything like that. Um, and for you people out there who have experienced pelvic exams before, they're not exactly the most comfortable thing ever, but they're really not supposed to hurt either. For trans guys who have been on T for a long time, they can be actually painful. One of the things that testosterone does is that it can cause atrophy on your vaginal walls, which basically means that your vaginal canal, instead of looking kind of like a tunnel, is really squished. And in order to put that speculum in there and open it up, it's very, very uncomfortable. I've had a couple pelvic exams since I've been on T, but this was definitely the worst one because it was post-op and I'm still bleeding and it's not 1000% healed. So they actually had to give me Tylenol before I went home because I was so crampy and uncomfortable after that. She did offer an estrogen gel because apparently putting that in there can help it heal faster and stop bleeding. So if I don't stop bleeding in the next couple days, I'm going to pick that up and use that. Um, it's very localized, so it's not going to impact my overall testosterone levels. But she said when she first started seeing trans patients, she was very hesitant to offer it because she didn't want it to be an uncomfortable experience for the patient. Um, because obviously we're going to have to put some stuff up there, which is not comfortable, and also we worked so hard to get on testosterone, now you want us to put estrogen in our body? Like, what the heck? But she also said that for most patients that she has had to offer it to, it's been a no-brainer. Like, this is going to help me stop bleeding, of course I'm going to use it type thing. Um, so that's really where I'm at now. I just got my TDI finally approved. It's been a month, so I haven't gotten paid, which sucks. But they just approved it this morning, so I should be expecting that within the next few days. I am hoping to go back to work the Monday after Thanksgiving. So long as everything continues to go well, that should be good. I'll get back to work. But yeah, overall, it was a really good experience. I'm very, very grateful for the opportunity to have had it done. For sure, I am so glad that I had that opportunity. It came at a really weird time, obviously, because of COVID, but it actually kind of worked out for me because I really needed the break off of work. Working in a health center, it's all COVID all the time, basically, so having some weeks off to just chill and not have COVID in my face 24/7 and recuperate like emotionally and do some self-care was really good. It also gave me some time to catch up on school and things that I actually enjoy. So it came at a really good time, which was nice. Getting back to work, I'm very excited for and a little bit nervous because we have had a lot of COVID spikes lately, but we will see how that goes. As far as billing, I haven't gotten a bill from the hospital yet. I'm still expecting it to probably be that $500 deductible that I have on my insurance, but nobody's talked to me about it yet, so I'm not entirely sure. But I will update you guys if I hear anything more about that, and if I have any more issues with FMLA or TDI. My FMLA paperwork was denied at first because I guess my surgeon filled it out too vaguely, so they had her redo that, and I honestly haven't heard back from them as far as whether I've been approved or not, so that's a little concerning, but I've gotten a paycheck from work when I'm supposed to through this whole time, so I'm assuming that everything is fine at this point. Um, I will definitely follow up on that and let you guys know if I post another update video. I'm going to add in some photos at the end of this, both of me and my healing process and all the things that they sent me home with after surgery, including these like weird hospital underwear that have actually been really useful, unfortunately. And one of those like respiratory exercise things where you like have to blow the indicator up to make sure that you're not going to get pneumonia, I guess. Um, but yeah, if you guys have any questions about histo in general, my experience, how it was different because of COVID, which honestly wasn't too different than what I've heard, feel free to leave comments at the bottom. You can private message me, you can send me an email. All that information will be in the description box. And don't forget to give me a follow because I will be updating on more trans-related content as soon as I can. Thanks and have an awesome day.